and call the meeting to order, a special meeting. And there are 4 of the 5 board members on the 377 board, so we do have a quorum. For the benefit of the board members, I think we'll jump over the consent agenda and move on to Mark first, and not take up their time, and come back to it after we have that later in the meeting. So with that, I will turn to you, Christy, and you and your staff. I think you had been given some questions, and we have a document in front of us where those have been answered. We appreciate that. If you've got some things to say now, I know we'll probably have some questions, and we'll lead off that way. So I'll turn it to you, Christy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us back so that we could answer questions that you might have regarding this year's application. We tried to answer some of those questions that you had in some of the information that we forwarded to kind of further clarify our application. And so hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to kind of look over that and kind of review that a little bit. Bree's going to kind of give kind of a short explanation, because applied behavior analysis services, you know, it is a very specific therapy approach for working with children with autism. And so Bree's going to share a little bit kind of about what that looks like. You know, we have a few children in the clinic already who, thanks to the fact that they have private therapy or private insurance, they're able to receive those services. I have to tell you, it was the cutest thing. It made my day this week, because right now during this time, we all know how important it is to wear these, right? And this little girl came in this week after just a day or two of working on her mask wearing goal. And she was wearing her mask all the way into our facility, and before would throw it across the room and scream. So we were really excited. The dad actually said it gave them hope as a family that they would not be prisoners in their own home forever, because that's how they've kind of felt. So just kind of an example of one child getting this type of service and a change that's already being made within their family. But Bree's going to share a little more in depth about what those services kind of look like and what that looks like for families. And then definitely, you know, we want to open it up to any questions that you guys have so that you can have a good understanding of those services and what we're wanting to do with the funding that you're providing, that we're requesting that you provide, you know, and how we're going to take the funding that you provide along with the other funding that we're providing, so, because your funding isn't going to pay for all of those services, but a portion of it, so that we can help support some of those children whose insurance, due to their lower socioeconomic status, doesn't cover and support applied behavior analysis services. So Vern, if that sounds okay, I'm going to pass it off to Bree to kind of talk a little bit about ABA. Does that sound good?
Sure does. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Bree.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, thank you so much for asking questions and getting back to us with any questions you may have. I know ABA can be confusing, and it can be a lot to comprehend, because it is so different than all of the other therapies that we provide. It is, you know, kind of different, and it is kind of a, you know, newer field. Our field is really only about 60 years old. In comparison to all the other fields, we are quote unquote newer. So it is just, you know, please let me know of any questions you have. I know it's different and changes. We've had a lot of change this year in 2020. So yes, so kind of a little bit more about ABA. It is a very, you know, kind of evidence-based and scientific approach. For kids without an autism diagnosis, they kind of understand the contingency of, if I do A, then B happens. If I do C, then D happens. And what's going to, you know, reinforce that behavior is a good outcome. What's going to not reinforce that behavior is maybe an undesirable outcome, as to where specifically kids on the autism spectrum don't really understand that contingency as natural as those who do not have an autism diagnosis. So that's where we really, really focus on in ABA is this is, you know, if you clap your hands, I'll tell you how awesome you are. I'll give you a goldfish and all that stuff, so that they understand I can follow instructions. I can observe others and maybe do what they're doing. Maybe, you know, look at those interactions from peers, you know, once COVID is, you know, passed, we can finally do a little bit more peer interaction than just wave through the doors and whatnot. But definitely, like Christy said, we are so proud of one of our clients right now. We've only been working on mask wearing for probably, a week and a half now, and she's already up to wearing it for 2 minutes without ripping it off and throwing it across the room and screaming. Whereas in the beginning, all we would do is put the mask out and put it next to her, and it was just an instant scream and throw. Where now she's wearing it into the car, out to the car. Mom and dad are having her wearing it at home, because they got trained the way we've been doing it here, and they've been doing that phenomenally, doing that carryover outside of the clinic setting. So we're so proud of her. So then when I know there was some clarifying questions about kind of what our application this year, what it's going to be focused on. How kind of ABA is set up through private insurance is that the client is approved for however many hours a week of direct therapy, typically between 30 and 40. It very much depends on the insurance company, what they will approve, and it depends on the needs of the child, because everything is so individualized. Every program, every target is individualized to our clients, to how they learn best and what they're going to make the most progress in. So looking at that, on top of that, they also get 10% of whatever their overall hours a week are. I should back up and say, those direct hours of 30 to 40 hours a week are done with our registered behavior technicians. So each of them went through, took a 40-hour training class, met with me. I signed off on a competency, making sure that they actually understood those concepts that they learned in that training. Then they had to take a standardized exam through a Pearson testing center. So an actual certified testing center exam. And then they actually became registered and certified behavior technicians, listed with the certification board that is, certifies all behavior analysts. And so that's who, and mind you, there are multiple RBTs per kid's team, just because 30 hours with one person is going to get a little old really quick. And it also to promote that generalization of skills so that we can do it with multiple people, multiple settings, different, maybe someone might ask a question a different way. So definitely, from the beginning, getting those social skills and generalizing skills out of the way, as well as, so they're doing the 30 hours, and then 10% of that is supervision by myself, the behavior analyst, to make sure that staff is consistent through, all the programming, because we do work on a whole list of things from waiting to, we have a kiddo starting potty training in a week. We have, motor imitation, we have communication, we have speech, writing, reading, math, all of those skills, vocalizations, just basic say what I says, to make sure that staff is consistent, everyone is doing it the same way. And if they are struggling, specifically staff, if there's anything maybe we need to tweak with the program, after analyzing their data, hey, this isn't really working, let's try it this way. Let's try it this way. If a kiddo is really not, grasping the concept of what we're trying to help them learn, as well as families meet with me at least 1 hour a week, so that they can learn what we're doing in therapy session, for whether it, be behavior plans that, we write up and that we implement, because consistency is key with our clients, that we have, consistent behavior plans for home and in clinic. And, we even share those with the schools of, hey, when they scream, we, withhold attention, we don't make eye contact, whatever that problem behavior may be for the clients. Or like I said, that skill acquisition, our little girls, her family's fantastic, that they came into a session during our parent training time. And I was like, look, Here's how we're doing it. We're setting a timer. We're putting the mask on her. When she's done, she gets 3 veggie straws, which is very exciting. Type of like, here's how we're working on it here. Here's how you need to work on it at home. Here's some data collection sheets. They go home, they took the data, and then they bring it back and we analyze it and we go over it together. And then on top of that, also 1 to 2 hours a week of just program updating, you know, analyzing the kiddos' data, analyzing their graphs, making sure that there's not any huge discrepancies between programs or staff, or like previously stated, everything is individualized. So we really want to make this as beneficial to the client as possible, that they are getting and being taught, and we're helping them the best way that they know how to learn. So I know it was a little spiel. Christy, anything I left out you could think of?
If I could just add something, sorry,
Yeah.
Christy.
No,
If I
go
could just
ahead,
add
Amy.
something real quick, Bree, I think one of the gaps is not quite like autism is, and I know not everyone has to have autism that's in this program, but it's such a huge spectrum that I think that it would help to explain just what autism is. And so like, why does it bother this little girl to wear a mask? Or so like, I think you did a good job of like explaining like the behavior or the reward system and trying to get them to do things. But I think it would help to just talk about like the sensory disintegration and struggles and like why these things are such a huge deal in the world.
Yes. So there are 3 criteria per the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Criteria Manual that all physicians use. But the 3 areas are obviously that socialization, one, which is very big for kids on the spectrum. The other one is repetitive speech and or sensory processing, or so when the kiddos are what we call self-stimming, whether it's hand flapping, kiddos who do vocal stims like that, or have any sort of sensory needs. So not only does hand flapping help, but also sensory defensiveness. It was very hard for her. She does not like things touching her. She does not like to be touched. She does not like to be tickled, hugged, cuddled, except for when she wants it. And it is very particular. She likes her feet squeezed. She likes her hands squeezed. She likes nothing else squeezed. She's a very particular young lady. So wearing a mask for her and touching her face is very highly aversive. And she will not allow parents to brush her hair. She cannot get her hair brushed. She cannot, she doesn't wear hats. Hats are too much on her head. So definitely like that, again, that sensory component. And then the third component for the DSM-5 is communication. Ultimately, for everyone, we like to get our wants and needs met, but it is very hard if we don't have appropriate ways to communicate, whether it is asking, hey, can I have a cookie? Or if it's exchanging a picture for a cookie, which we call a picture exchange system, or using one of our automated devices, the apps with Proloquo or LAMP or any of those other assisted augmentative devices, to get our wants and needs met. And that's where you really see a lot of behaviors is, the poor kiddo just wants a cookie, but we don't have an effective way to communicate that. So that's really what they look at with diagnostic criteria for diagnosing a client with autism. They have to meet 2 out of the 3, whether it's communication, socialization, or that sensory component, in order to get a autism diagnosis. Does that better help explain?
Yeah, and I think, it's just really hard to explain because it's very complicated and confusing. But just that, I think, just talking about like that adversary reaction to things that most people will not have adverse reactions to, and so because the things they're having those adverse reactions to are things that, like kind of what Christy was saying too, like their family can't function, the child isn't functioning. How does that affect them being school appropriate? So just maybe just adding a little bit more to those adverse reactions and how that just affects their life, period.
Absolutely, Amy. I think you know, it is really hard to really visualize what that can look like for a family if you haven't lived in a family's shoes or been a part of a family that has a child that has some significant sensory processing challenges. You know, we all process sensory input differently, and we all take that information in differently, you know, and for most of us, our sensory sensitivities don't impact our daily life. Like for instance, a friend of mine does not like tags on her shirt, but guess what? She cuts them out. She's able to wear regular clothing and go to work and function as an adult, right? But for some children, that sensitivity is so much more intense. Be it a simple sound that you and I might find enjoyable, a child with autism or sensory processing challenges, it could feel like 10 times worse than those fingers on a chalkboard. And whenever those reactions happen, it really affects a child's ability to function at home, but then also later on at school. And so that's part of what ABA really looks at, is how we can help children move through some of these behavioral challenges that impact their capacity to share life with those around them and be able to go to school and have success. Because if I'm constantly thinking about how my school chair feels as I'm sitting in it, because it feels uncomfortable or weird to me, I can't even think about what that educator is saying up in the front of the classroom right now. Because I'm thinking about, oh, this chair feels weird. Oh, my clothing feels weird. Oh, the little girl next to me is clicking her pen and I want to throw something at her. So guess what? If I haven't had somebody work with me on these behaviors, I might end up throwing something at her. And then I'm not being successful at school. And next thing I know, there's a behavior plan put into place. And again, I'm not getting that education that I need because they're busy dealing with some of these negative behaviors that haven't been dealt with in another way previously. And that's where ABA really comes in, because research has shown that through this really intensive services, these children then can go into school and have that success that they need to learn. Because a lot of them are really bright, wonderful children who have a lot of potential later on in life to hold down jobs and do further education, higher education. But we have to work through some of these things when they're young. And if we don't work through them when they're young, then we're trying to correct those later on whenever they're adults. And those behaviors have been set in stone for so long. And I know I have some tendencies and behaviors that after this long, it's really hard to change them. And so it's a lot easier for us to work on those things when they're little, so that they can have that success in school. And it is a big financial commitment to one child. We recognize that, you know, but whenever we look at that cost savings down the road and the potential that this has for our community long-term, when we think again about someone who might be more employable, because they're not having these kind of reactions at work and starting a job and getting fired and starting a job and getting fired or let go. You know, someone who is more employable, someone who is more educationally ready to learn and be successful, to where they don't need as many supports in school, and we can help save some of the stress that's being put on our local school districts by supporting these children early on in their development. And I think, you know, that's why whenever we look at the funding requests that we have, you know, we're asking for the 377 grant to cover the registered behavior technician's time, which is that direct service time during the day, but it's not covering the additional hours of the BCBA, you know, in training and certification and all those types of things that go into place in order to be able to provide those services for children. So, thank you.
And kind of going off of what Chris, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Christy, I think you were really talking to what we were discussing as well, and that is the the expense per student. And the RBTs are what we're paying for, but yet for Bree, it's almost another double that, or for her involvement, which is paid by someone else. Is doing this for people that do not have insurance, is this the first time we're doing that, and this is an experiment, or we've been doing that before, or help me on that? Because I know you've got others that are in the rooms with them that are on the insurance program, and if I were to walk in, I wouldn't know who was who.
Yes, exactly. So, right now, what we're finding is we have a lot of families who have reached out to us since we've started supporting and providing ABA services, but they don't have access to that because public aid does not cover that. So our lower socioeconomic families, who are some of the ones most in need, don't have access to this service. So it would be new in the fact that we're offering it to families on public aid or, lower socioeconomic, however, you as a group want to kind of look at that. But it's, when we look at those families who have more economic challenges, this would be the first time that we're offering it to them because they have no way of accessing it without the support of the 377 grant and the other funding sources that we'll be utilizing to help pay for Bree's time. So it truly is a community collaboration to help make this more accessible to everyone in our community.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Fern.
And Christy, is it normal sometimes for families that would be able to work, or maybe even especially if there's a single caretaker, to sometimes have to give up their job because of their child's challenges and not being able to have a caretaker? Like, I know I've lost some babysitters along the way. So is that normal? Like, this is, like when we think of individuals that end up without insurance, these could be, individuals that ended up without insurance because of their child's challenges.
Absolutely, Amy. A family that I have worked with for years, that single mom who has had such a difficult time maintaining employment because it's hard to maintain childcare. So if you're looking at an organized childcare placement for your child and they have significant behaviors, I'm sure some of you have heard about the challenges families experience where the child might be removed from daycare due to those behaviors, or the daycare just from the get-go does not let them in. And really discriminates against them because they don't want to have to deal with it and deal with those challenges down the road. And so it can be very difficult. Parents getting called into school repeatedly for meetings and rewriting of plans, which, not everyone has an employer who's flexible in that way and gives parents that capacity. And so definitely whenever we think about children with autism and their parents, a lot of those parents are underemployed due to limited capacity of childcare and adequate educational support for their children.
And I would add, this is Mike, I would just add that this project is very consistent to our mission and what we've done for kids in this community. We are the only provider of pediatric therapy services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapies to children over 3 whose primary insurance is Medicaid. So this is in line with what we've tried to do for the community, and it's I think one way that as an organization, I know we're asking a lot from the county in terms of taxpayer dollars, but we're also committed to giving back in whatever we can to support and to help mitigate some of the socioeconomic factors that really adversely affect many of the families in our community.
Thanks,
I have a
Mike.
2-part question. First of all, how are these children, did you narrow it down to just these 2 children? And how are you assured that the parents are committed to this, that they're not going to leave the program, but they're going to stay with you?
That's a great question, Jan. So we have a screening tool that we've devised because we know there's going to be more children applying for the opportunity to be part of this than what we can serve through this grant funding. So we have an application process that's weighted according to need. So it looks at the level of behaviors or the number of behaviors that children are experiencing. It looks at socioeconomic challenges that families might be experiencing, and that's weighted. Also looking at if families have other resources they might be able to utilize versus not having access to any other resources. So we've developed the screening tool that we'll use to help identify which children can access the program. And then all families do sign a consent and a commitment letter stating the level of commitment, because we know this is a big commitment to families, so we have a form that families sign off stating that they understand that their child will be at, for instance, at our clinic, at our facility for 30 to 35 hours a week. They understand that they are expected to have a weekly meeting with Bree. We do have flexibility in those schedules to help accommodate different working schedules. So we're not going to hold them to a work time. We're going to work around their schedules to help make that happen, because we know they might not have as much flexibility as some other families might have. But basically, they will be required to sign that agreement to commit to that over this year.
So if they would not, through half the year, if they leave, then what do? Do you pull another child in?
We would pull another child. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You understand what we have to justify the expense to the taxpayers.
I completely understand.
And I understand I understand everything that you've said. So
yes.
The early childhood, excuse me.
Oh, go ahead.
The school districts have early childhood programs for.
Correct.
And are they using those just to find out the difficulties they may have with some of the children? Are they using any of the ABA training to work with children under age 3?
So, when we look at the local school districts, they do not provide a strict ABA program within their educational services that they provide. So the children are getting, those children over the age of 3 who will qualify and attend school are getting services through their school district. This is just a little bit different. And definitely some of the children we serve are attending early childhood, for instance, half a day, and then they come here to our facility after that, and then do Saturdays or even Sunday times to get their hours and additional services and supports in. So it's meant to kind of complement what they're getting through school. And I appreciate everything that all of you are doing to learn more about this, because like you said, you do have to justify the funding to your funders. And part of that's, Jan, right? Educating yourself and learning more about what's being presented. So thank you.
Mary?
Is this program similar to some of the programs that the Baby Fold offers for autism?
I don't know if Mike or Brian might know more, but I'm not aware that while they have programming for children with autism, they do not have an ABA program specific for the children at Baby.
If you guys like, it's Brian. Sorry,
Yes.
my fiance is actually the autism coordinator at the junior senior high school at Baby Fold. They do not have a BCBA, so this level of intensive therapeutic interventions are not provided by Baby Fold. the kiddos that Babyfold is working with during the day are kiddos who aren't able to be served in their local school district. So their school district is paying tuition to Babyfold to work with those children. They use models like ABA. Bree, what is the other one? I'm drawing a blank on it. It's ABA and it's like a 5-letter acronym. It'll come to me, but they use that from a curriculum standpoint, but they are not specifically using ABA or a BCBA for that matter.
Okay, second question. As I read through the documentation for this program and the development of it, most of the documentation is 40 and 50 years old. There's no documentation in the last 20 years. And I just wondered why there's no documentation. You know, I was getting my master's degree in school guidance and counseling 50 years ago, and this is some of the information we had then. So I wondered why you didn't have newer documentation. Also, it refers to timeout rooms, which I'm a supporter of timeout, but the state of Illinois is trying to rule that the use of timeout rooms not to be acceptable, and how you would deal with that. So that's 2 questions: documentation and timeout rooms.
So the timeout room piece, having be as an educator myself, this is Brian again. It's not that they're looking for timeout rooms. They are looking to get away from what we call isolation rooms. So taking a kiddo in distress, putting them in a room and leaving them in there by themselves. That is that issue that hit the Chicago Tribune, I guess it's probably 18 months ago now, that talked about kids being locked in closets, padded rooms, things like that. That was the guidance that the state put out then. And I speak to that, Mary, again, because I came from a school just like Babyfold in Peoria that served the same kiddos that Babyfold serves. It was the isolation room that they were looking to do away from. The sensory friendly rooms that a child can go in to help calm nerves and things like that. That's something that you guys have already supported, that in case you start to hear hammering and drilling, the money you allowed us to allocate as part of that computer lab has one of those rooms in it, literally across the hall from my office. To the second part about the documentation, I'm going to leave that to Christy or Mike or Bree. What I can say though about that, kind of having been in education for almost 20 years now, even ABA as a practice and BCBAs from a school district standpoint, gosh, it's probably only relevant in the schools in the last 10 years. Really prevalent in a driving force behind curriculum for children on the autism spectrum and children who aren't on the autism spectrum. And I'll use my son as a prime example. My son, who still gets speech services, who has not been diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum, but has a lot of traits that would fit in line with the autism spectrum. I mean, they changed that whole dynamic several years ago when they kind of put a lot more categories under the autism spectrum that a child might encounter, whether that be in school or whether that be at home. But Bree, I'll ask you to talk a little bit more about some of that actual research that you presented.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much, Mary, for your question. There are countless and countless studies. I would be more than happy to send you the thousands. There are actually like thousands of articles. I just sent out the study that all of it was based off of. There have been multiple redos and, retrials and restudied ones of that study. I just wanted to give you guys kind of the original to kind of get the understanding of kind of where the basis for this was. But I, again, would be more than happy to share the countless articles that support this within the last, oh my goodness, even 5 years. There's about 47 articles just in the last 18 months that say, hey, this is still a relevant article and this is still, you know, beneficial and it still holds true to this day. As far as the timeout rooms, that is absolutely something that in ABA that we try to avoid what we call punishment at all costs. Punishment is a last resort. It is, you do everything reinforcing and to the good behavior, and you hope that, you know, if you've done a good enough job reinforcing, that the negative behavior will kind of take care of itself. But with those timeouts, these kids are put in a room and they're just told, here, you figure it out. You kind of, you know, stop your behavior whenever you're ready and whenever you finally get your needs met. Whereas we are, no, let us help you figure out what strategies we can use to help you calm yourself down. Because like if you're out at the grocery store with mom and, you know, you all of a sudden have a behavior, timeout is not an option. There is not a room that is going to be safe for you to go to. So let's help you, especially at a young age, so that it doesn't hinder you later on down the road. But let's help you at a young age identify what helps you, individually you, and what works for you may not work for someone else. But let's help you figure out what we can do to help you be successful, what is going to, you know, calm you down, what's going to help you get your sensory needs met, what's going to help you focus and reach your full potential. So does that better answer your question?
I would just add to, like, at the health department, we have what's called off the grid, and it's kind of like basically a sensory room. It's an office that's calming, and it's also our breastfeeding, or excuse me, our lactation room. But it's just an area, like, you know what, like, and we have a lot of people that work in cubicles. Like sometimes we need to be away from people, where there's a private phone call, and so we coloring in there. I mean, you can't tell like I'm an autism mom, right? Like we got fidgets in there. Like, so we have all these things where like people can just go in there and just like take a breath and calm down. And also from experience with both of my boys that are on the spectrum, they like to be alone. And so sometimes like, it's not the same as like a timeout in the corner or this just like plain room. Like sometimes they get so overstimulated or just too much talking or whatever that they're like, they call it peopled out. Like I'm peopled out. I need to go to my room and just be away from people. And so it was very unfortunate what came out in the Chicago Tribune as far as, and I've heard of situations of where it's like, this kid is out of control. I don't know what to do with them. And I'm putting them in a room until they calm down. And so that's totally inappropriate. And so that needs to not happen. But I was horrified also when that came out because like sensory rooms are so important to like regulate to be able to re-regulate or regulate yourself. And so it's good that like just explaining like there's like these are things that are good for people that are not on the autism spectrum to just be able to have some quiet space to calm down versus being shoved in a room until you're forced to be quiet.
Phyllis?
Unmute
Your
yourself.
timer.
You're muted.
You're muted, Phyllis.
Well, while we're doing that, can I ask another question? How many
Am I on now?
Oh, she's on now.
Am I on? Go ahead, Jan.
Well, I was just wondering how many other places in McLean County can, well, I understand you can get ABA training insurance. If you don't have insurance, is there anywhere else in the county that you can take a child and get help?
No.
So is more, they invest more money into training the parents on how to deal with their child and not the child his or herself.
So I think whenever you're looking at the research and the plan itself, it's really a combination. So there's time spent directly with the child and time spent with the parents so that the parents can carry over at home. And really that's where whenever you look at the outcomes, that's where you get the best outcomes, is in how that is officially set up in that way.
So Mark
First ABA program.
Okay, so Mark First is really the only place you can bring a child that's severely autistic under the age 3 to hopefully get some training.
There's other places that provide ABA services for children who have private insurance, but there is no one in our community that's looking at trying to support children who would not have access to this service without some other funding source. No. Does that answer your question, Jan?
I believe so. Thank you.
Okay. Phyllis, I believe you had a question.
Oh, Jan, can I just jump in here quick? I'm sorry, it's Brian. I just want to let you know too that we are also trying to figure out is the request to the 377 board would cover the RBT's work with the child. We are trying to find other sources to cover the BCBA's time as well. But right now, Mark First is looking at just taking that on.
That's good to know. Thank you.
I just want to give like a time notice. We do have another group presenting at 1:45. I want to make sure everyone's questions were answered by Mark First. So hopefully we can decide. And Christy, can you, Jane brought up a good point. They were talking last meeting about like the parents' involvement, the children's involvement. Can you just real quickly and just like, and a little more quickly but with a thorough answer, provide some on like how you do engage with the parents. This isn't just, working with the children and passing them on, like how you do engage with the parents.
There we go. So the parents definitely have a weekly training time with Bree as the BCBA regarding how to implement programming at home. And then they also are routinely seeing the registered behavior technicians every morning and at the end of the day whenever they're picking up, or at the end of their session when they're picking up. And so there's some, informal conversations that happen there just regarding how services are going and what she did at home, what they did at clinic, just for that carryover. There's a lot of emails and informal communications that just happen throughout the week as programming changes. So parents are always informed as programming is changing, what they can implement at home, what they can do differently. They can do observations, where they're working alongside the RBT throughout the week, so that we can ensure that everybody's following the same plan of action. And so there's a lot of back and forth communication that happens, and very strong relationships that get built over time because of that.
Christy, a follow along to that. How do you, or can you do well, measure what's going on in the home?
Yeah, the parents actually collect their own data, which is wonderful. This is a very data-driven process. Okay. And so the parents actually are trained on how to collect data and collect data at home regarding how child is progressing towards the goals that are written into the plan. So thanks, Vern.
I do have other questions. I can't figure out if I'm on or not.
I can hear you.
I am?
You
Okay,
are.
I have just quick questions. How many children are in this now at Mark?
Great question. So when we look at, because it's such an intensive program, each BCBA can only serve about 5 to 6 children on a caseload. And so right now we have 3 children that are getting 30 to 35 hours a week of applied behavior analysis services.
And how old
right
are they?
now we have capacity for 2 to 3 more.
How old are they?
Our children can range from 2.5 up to 10 would probably be kind of where we'd be cutting some of that off and really considering, but usually we really want to catch them when they're young, Phyllis.
Right. So how long have you been doing this specific program?
So this specific program actually started up this year. Prior to our move to our new facility, we really didn't have the space and capacity to be able to provide this service for our pediatric program, but we've been providing applied behavior analysis service for our adults with disabilities for many years already. So it's something that we've had experience with. But we were just expanding it to our PEDS program. And as we expanded it, that's where we really saw this real need in the community for children who don't have access right now.
Right. So how many RBTs do you have at Mark?
Bree, what's our current number at?
Currently, we are at 7 registered behavior technicians.
Okay. What happens, what will happen to this if we fund this for 2 children this year? What happens, or how successful is it if we can't fund after this?
You know, that's a great question, Phyllis. And, you know, I feel that Mark First has really shown that we are looking for other funding sources. We're already committed to the other funding, you know, related to serving these 2 children. So, you know, if for some reason 377 would look at this next year and say, you know what, I don't think that it was a good investment for us, or we want to invest in something different. You know, I think that we would, you know, over this next year, continue to look for other funding sources, because to be honest, I'd love to see this grow. So even if you did fund this, love to find other funding sources so that we can, you know, bring on other children that don't have access.
Right. And I think that's critical. But the other thing I saw on the questions that we had asked, you said 47% of the experimental group achieved normal intellectual and educational functioning. So if a child gets like partway through the year, is there still a chance that they're going to, or is this a multiple year training program before they get to kindergarten? Because I know, or early childhood education, some of them that do not have this get into early childhood education at age 3 or 4, and it's impossible for the school to deal with. So what if they have 6 months in the program? Is that going to show improvement when they get to the public schools?
Absolutely. I mean, children are moving forward in their goals throughout the program. So even with 6 months, you're going to see changes, and from the data they're collecting, they're going to be able to share the outcomes of that, and looking at where the progress is with the goals that the children have.
Okay. I think everything else I have to ask, I can do it during a discussion later, because I know we're on a time crunch. So thank you very much for your explanations. It helps.
Good. Thank you, Phyllis.
Have we finished with our questions, board members?
I am satisfied so far until our discussion later.
Okay, fine.
I am too. I can wait and discuss things later.
Okay. Well, we thank you for coming and giving us what I've found to be, and I think my colleagues would say that, been very helpful and very informative. We really appreciate your time for this, and thank you very much for that. We'll be back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your inquisitiveness. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yes,
Thank you.
so much.
Bye, Mike.
Thanks.
Bye, Brian.
Bye all.
Okay.
So Easter Seals, Julie with Easter Seals is with us. And then it looks like Julie has a coworker with her from Easter Seals. And just we do have it sketched out for Easter Seals to present until 2:30. And because of streaming, there is a hard stop at 3 o'clock.
We're sorry if we were delayed a little bit, but we were asking questions, so we thank you for your patience. So what we're trying to maybe learn more of is how this program is going to work, of training the parents and have that work for training the children as well. So maybe you could give some opening comments. I think you've answered some questions here, and then I'm sure we'll have questions for both of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having us today. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the opportunity to share more about our program and expand on your questions and answer any new questions that you have. I also want to thank Christy and Bree because they did a beautiful explanation of autism and ABA. So I want to thank them for that and for the work that they're doing. This actually was born out of COVID-19. Caitlin, would that be correct?
Yeah.
The therapist noticed the parents were struggling with behavior, and the therapists are the ones who saw the need immediately, and knew that something had to happen. So I'm going to throw it over to Caitlin, and she can take it from there. Caitlin?
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, it's kind of nice that you had one ABA into another ABA, although our programs that we're funding right now look very different. We really did find that parents struggle all the time, definitely more so during COVID. So we decided to take that opportunity to kind of launch, knowing we would get a good feel for things. If we could help parents during their most stressful times of life, and we figured out this program and we could continue it on, we knew we'd be even more successful when life calmed down a little bit for everybody. And just, kind of like the other group said too, just funding for individuals who need ABA, if you don't have private insurance, just doesn't exist. And so we're really trying to find ways to support those families. And really at the end of the day, parents need to feel empowered and feel equipped to handle their child's problem behavior and feel knowledgeable to do that, which is really our end goal of this program.
So Caitlin, can you share more about how the program is going to work?
Sure.
Just a little overview of that.
Yeah, so the program runs for 8 weeks at a time, so we kind of do it in semester chunks. And parents or really caregivers, we have a grandparent who's in our current parent training series, come onto a link for 1 hour each week, same time every week, and they meet with a small group leader who trains them in ABA techniques to work with their child on. It's very individualized, to which the caregiver brings the problem behavior that they're having so that there could be a group discussion. But we also put it in a group format so that parents could make connections with other parents, because it is a really difficult parenting situation we're in, and we're finding that parents of kids with autism just can't connect to their friends who have typically developing children. So our network was to hope to feel like that. Parents have homework that they have to do every week, things that they have to go in and implement and try with their child and give us feedback on, so that we can continue to build with them. And then so the whole program goes for 8 weeks, in which they work on different strategies and interventions for them to actually do at home, show us how they went, and for us to then give feedback on.
And I think, and Caitlin, you can speak to this, one of the best stories that I remember seeing over the summer when we piloted the program was the parent who actually created her own chart of chores and then fun things. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I thought that was the coolest thing.
Yeah. So the end goal is that they don't need us, right? That they don't need the therapist at the end of it. We hope we don't see them again. So we're trying also to give them a lot of tools of what they could do in their home and what they can create. So we do help assist and create visuals and things like that. But we also train them in how to do some of those things. We've had some parents like, I found this on Amazon. Is this the best thing to use, or how can I adjust this? And so it's really a lot of coaching for families to use the tools they have at home or what they feel like they can handle purchasing, and then us giving them supplemental things in order to really put it in the parents' hands and have the parents feel comfortable doing this and going to the grocery store and going to grandma's house and feeling comfortable doing all the things that their family wants to do together.
During the process,
I'm sorry, I need to ask for permission.
Okay, go right ahead, no go.
What kind, I see you have an assessment at the conclusion of the series. Is that, that's going to help you decide whether to continue on with the program?
Yeah, so at the conclusion of our series, we do survey all of our parents. We ask a few different questions because it's really about what it did for them. So we ask them, you know, do you feel more educated and more well-equipped? Did your child's problem behaviors reduce? Do you feel like you got enough information? Are you too overwhelmed with information? And then we use those survey responses to keep refining our process as we go. So if we have a bunch of parents who are like, too much information, I couldn't keep it straight, we're going to go and fix and refine that and then survey again at the next step.
And you feel you feel from those responses that you're offering a good thing and you need to continue, right?
Yeah, we've had a lot of really good feedback about just the education parents are receiving, and it is giving them access to interventions that they can't get through their state insurance or pay for privately. So they're getting another expert to sit around the table with them, which has been really great. We have also had really good feedback. We do allow 2 caregivers from each family per seat. So we have had like a grandparent join in, or, you know, like the aunt who always babysits. And so that's been really great too, to create that support network for the family and help make things more consistent for the child. And it really is helping families bridge a gap too. There are wait lists for almost every service line in Central Illinois. So it's also kind of giving parents something to do and help with their children while they also might be waiting on a wait list for others.
Is there any thought in working with other agencies to let them know about this program? I mean, are you cooperating?
Yeah, we currently work with the Autism Collective. They serve a lot of underprivileged families, so they're seeing a lot of families who don't have the insurance coverage that they're looking for. But we've also connected with other local agencies just to get the word out. We've even been like, okay, we can reserve 2 slots for your agency. We work with the Central Illinois Autism Association. So we're trying to reach a lot of different avenues, not just Easter Seals families. We want to reach the families who aren't getting services and aren't getting access as well. So we've been utilizing community partners for that reason.
Yeah, that's good to know.
During the process of this 8 weeks and working with the families, how is the application where each child may be different? How do you read that, and how does that get implemented then within the family that this is what we should be doing with this kiddo?
Yeah, so they each have individual homework packets that we mail to them before the series even begins. And so families will fill those out individually. They either take pictures and email it or scan it to their group leader. So each group leader kind of has information for each individual child. But also they talk about it in the group. So for instance, we had a training this morning and one of the parents wanted to focus on picking up toys. So we did talk about it as a group because everyone could connect to that in some sense. So we do a lot of things as a group because a lot of kids have a lot of similar problem behavior, and then families get to hear other intervention strategies as well. Our group leaders also follow up by email outside of class. So once they return their homework and they can see what things look like, they'll give individual feedback provided back to that family in a private email, just talking about tweaks that they might need to make or things that went really well from what they can see in the homework that they completed.
Thank you.
That's really good.
I have a question. I don't think I'm on camera. I can't really tell.
We can hear you.
How long?
Beautiful.
It's all right. How long have you been doing this? I mean, is this just something you started since COVID?
Yeah, we actually just piloted it over the summer. It's been one of the things that's kind of been on our radar to do, but we kind of rushed through it and jump-started it because we felt like there was such a need in the community. So we did our pilot program over summer, and we are just finishing up our second semester in the last 2 weeks here of December.
Okay, thanks.
Do you anticipate it growing?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm sorry, do you anticipate this program is going to continue to grow?
Yeah, we currently offer 2 different classes per semester. So there's usually an evening and then either a lunch or a morning class, just to try to help work with kids' school schedules and everyone's work schedules. But we have yet to start a semester without a wait list. I can tell you, like, just yesterday, I got another one through that we forwarded on and added to our wait list. So we're constantly having parents kind of funneling through. And then as we're continuing, we're finding word of mouth, like, oh, I'm a part of this autism support group and this mom recommended it. So I think the more we do it, we're going to continue to see that grow. But so far, we haven't even really marketed for it. We've kind of reached out to families who are looking for help. So even if our wait list dropped, I really think there would be some really minor marketing and we would fill it up pretty quickly.
I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Is there some kind of selectivity between your program, maybe the Baby Folds program, and Mark First, as to maybe Mark First has the more severe autistic children and yours aren't as severe?
There is definitely, and I just heard the tail end, but it looks like they're doing a pretty traditional one-on-one ABA model, which is ideal. Like, right, kids getting direct therapy is great. Having translation to parents is great. We also do that at Easter Seals. It's just really hard to financially sustain for those who don't have commercial insurance. And so our focus really was just looking on those underserved families who aren't getting other resources. So we still can get kids who have pretty severe problem behaviors. We can get kids who are less severe. We can kind of serve that whole variety. I think it's just a different need and a different basis that we're looking at, and family availability and where resources are. And because ours is continuing to change, like you get a new class each semester. So we're really hoping to funnel through a lot more families. And then hopefully maybe they do move on and get services that they need, but we help to bridge a gap, or we bridge the gap that in which now school is being successful enough and they don't need additional resources.
As you look at perhaps expanding this in the future, what are some of the things that you would need to deal with that might hold you back from doing it? What are the barriers to expanding?
Sure. The barriers to expanding would definitely just be staffing. Right now, our group leaders who run it are what we call our ABA apprentices. They're in their final year of becoming a BCBA. They're going through graduate school, and I supervise them. So we currently have 3. We typically have around 2 at a time. So we're always trying to manage their caseload so that they can serve a good amount of clients, and also then do the parent training series. So I really think it comes to looking at making sure we had enough people to run it. But as far as like resources, because it's all virtual, we're not looking at space, you know, even, you know, you don't have to be in the Bloomington area. You don't have to live in Normal or live in Peoria. There's a little bit more flexibility because it's telehealth. So it does allow some more rural families participate as well. So really the only barriers I see are looking at making sure we have the staffing to keep up with the need. But Eastern Steels already has an ABA growth plan over the next 3 years. So I don't even really foresee that being much of a bigger year.
Thank you.
Just because this money is McLean County taxpayer money, are some of your families from outside of McLean County? Like Eureka or Pontiac?
Yeah, currently in our current classes, they are. We did add keeping track of counties to our wait list. So that way, if we had restricted funds for certain counties, we could make sure to pair those counties up with those individuals. So we do currently have people from all over, but we did start tracking that so that we were at a place where if we had restricted funds, we could manage that easily.
Good.
I don't have further questions.
Jan?
No, keep up the good work. I think you're servicing a lot of children and families. Thank you.
Yes. Phyllis, do you have any more
No,
questions?
I do not have any other questions, and I second what Jan said in that I appreciate the fact that Easter Seal saw the need for this program and filled a need that obviously isn't being filled by any other organization. I also like the fact that you are working with other groups, so that's something that's important to our board. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we value collaboration a lot. It just gives us the most success. And at the end of the day, we want our families to be successful, whether it's with us or someone else. We just want our parents to feel supported. So thanks for letting us come and brag. We think we're doing great things too. And we love talking about it. So thanks for your questions.
Well, thank you for coming back and spending your time with us today. We appreciate that very much. I think you answered our questions.
Thank you for inviting us. We appreciate that.
All right.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
I think we're back just as the 377 board.
I don't know. You have a lot of other names on there.
Okay.
You have a Taylor Davis, and you have a caller that's called in, and you have.
Is there anybody in public viewing? Oh, Taylor, yes.
Taylor's still on.
Taylor is the behavioral health specialist for the health department. I don't know if you've met her before, but she's part of the behavioral health program. In public, we usually don't have anybody that comes in person to public viewing, but per Open Meeting Act, we have to have that available.
Okay. It tells me my camera's not available, so that's fine with me, as long as you can hear me.
Okay. I'll go back to the beginning of our agenda then, and if we could finish our looking at the paid allocations from August through November. The largest one obviously was in August. Are there any questions about any of the four?
No one signed off on the bills for the last 2 months. Am I reading that correctly?
I questioned that also. I didn't see anything. There's some here for August, and then we had, I think, 1 or 2 for September, and then nothing else. So what's that about?
And Susan Schaefer from the county board signed off, which is fine, but usually that's not been the case.
I think what she signed.
Responsibility, but I think because of COVID, we haven't done that, correct?
So I think is COVID 2020 is a mess. So the treasurer, I think that's the title, has been out. And so Susan Schaefer is the health chair committee. So I don't know if that's why she signed it. But normally you burn to sign, but with just so many people working remotely and the way that things are, that we're going to see some little fees. The bills were still paid, everything still went through. There's going to be some little quirks in this pandemic.
Sure. Well, the auditor was out also on maternity leave.
Thanks for that explanation, Amy, because it does look weird in it, and I think it makes perfect sense that nothing this year makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense that nothing this year makes sense. That's a very good way of looking at it, Phyllis. And Mary, you're right. I didn't mean treasurer, I meant auditor. And so I actually had to, that's who I usually get these committee reports from, is from Michelle. And I had to get them from one of her coworkers since she's out. And so there's probably just Susan signs off on other ones as the health committee chairman, and probably just one, two, but yeah, nothing is normal.
You're cutting out, Amy.
Oh, sorry. I just said nothing is normal this year.
But you are cutting out.
Nothing's the same this year is what she's saying.
Right. Okay.
We move on.
I could sign these and hold them up to the screen. If there are no others, then a motion to approve the consent agenda would be in order.
I'll move that.
All right, thank you. Mary and I think Phyllis jumped in. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Motion's approved. Why don't we go back to the discussion that we just left and then follow up and have our discussion about the template for the any additional funding that we might have on the process and other monies that we still have left. Why don't we go ahead and we've actually approved Easter seal already, I think, at the last meeting. So the one that's on hold right now is March 1st. So that meeting or that subject is open for discussion. I thought we had good discussion on it today. So
I agree. Is it okay if I talk now?
yes, please do, Phyllis.
Okay. I agree. I'm glad that they gave us further explanation, and it certainly answered a lot of the questions that I had. I did do some other research and found out that, I think when we look at this $92,000 per child, we also have to look at the savings that we are providing to the public school system, because this isn't something that has been provided in the past. And in talking to various people, some of these children who are severely autistic get no services. They get put into early childhood education at the public school, and the burnout there is amazing. So having teachers turn over, having teachers call in sick, adding social workers, adding RNs, which are required in the early childhood education. We have to add all that into what is costing the school system without this ABCBA training. I talked to Bloomington. I tried to get through to Unit 5, but Bloomington was a lot more responsive. And for one teacher and one aide for one student, plus maybe 1 day of a sub, plus 2 hours of RN, it's going to be over $70,000 per year per child in the schools. And I think that's a low estimate because that doesn't take into consideration a teacher leaving in the middle of the year and having to train another one. So when you look at spending $92,000 per child to maybe save this child being able to go into a regular classroom, I don't think that's too out of line, because it's going to cost the public school system close to $70,000 and probably much more than that per child.
Yes, go ahead, Jen.
And I was listening to the discussion. It sounds to me, this is the first year they're in this program. This is kind of seed money for them to use because they're looking at other sources that can help fund this.
Yes.
And so I thought, okay, that could be a good thing. We're helping a program get started. Let's see what's going to happen with this. Somebody's got to give them a chance to start.
You're right. It is new, and in fact, they're virtually almost matching per student the Breeze time with that.
Right.
But we're paying for about half of it if it will be that.
Well,
The
one
other
more
thing,
Yes.
the other thing is, my understanding from what they told us today is they couldn't start this they didn't start this program before because, number one, they didn't have the space. And now
Yes.
that they're in the new facility, they have a lot more space to be able to handle extra programs. So I know it's lack of staff, but I think in Mark First's case, it was also a lack of space.
And to continue on, I think I would be excited to learn that they also listen to the ideas, for example, from Easter Seals, the success they're having, and try to pull some of this, pull that together, have more collaboration, because of the very intensive program for the two young children, but also involving parents to be able to share their success with ABA or the things they're learning. It's just, to me, it just seems like it's really strong. It could be very strong.
The money is very different between Mark First and Easter Seals,
Right.
but two different applications really of the process of ADA. One is very intensive with the having the child there 30 to 35 hours a week. And we're on the other end, they're training the parents and working with them on doing it. That's hitting even more people than in the county.
And that's really helping the schools too.
Right, that's right.
Very much so.
But I agree with your perspective, and I came away with that as well, that this is an effect. You could look at seed money to get it started.
Yeah.
And also, I did have an opportunity, I think I mentioned that, of being at their open house and seeing the facility. And Carl Broman spent several $100,000 building that out for them. Of renovating that space.
Yeah.
They didn't knock down walls, but they had to do a lot of other things in there.
Right.
So that's another community partner, if you will.
I think it's through Mark's First planning, seeing the need for the room and their planning.
Yes.
It's good. Yeah.
Well, I think it was right for a lot of reasons to defer this and then to go through this process with them. So I appreciated their approach too. I think they were very cooperative about it.
I was very appreciative to hear further explanation today from both Mark First and Easter Seals, even though we've already approved Easter Seals.
Yes.
And I realized that it is good for seed money, but I just cannot live with spending this kind of money and not having it help more people. I just think Easter Seals has done such a fantastic job. And I know there's a need for intense and care, one-on-one. But I think when we're talking about taxpayer money, we have to, I approve of doing this, but taxpayer money, I cannot agree to spend it on just 2 students. And I won't object if it passes. I think that's fine, but this is my feeling.
I understand.
What swayed me, Mary, was the fact that this is the first year, and they're looking at other funding sources, and the hope that this is going to open up more help for children and help for the schools.
I don't know why I keep getting muted, because I'm not doing anything. But I guess I'm still on.
Yes, you are.
It shows you're not what you are. Yeah.
Okay. I will vote in favor of this, because I think that 92,000 is much, much more than what we see for just the ABA, or the RBT. And if a child doesn't make it through the whole year and they take in another child, I think it may be more than 2 children. It's just that we're only going to pay for 2 children at once. So, maybe more than 2 children will get help from this, because I did ask, if a child is only in the program for 6 months, are they going to notice a lot of improvement? And Christy said yes. So
they're figuring it out. Yeah.
So if it's appropriate, Vern, I'll make the motion to approve the $184,000 for pediatric therapy to Mark 1st.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I will second it.
Okay, Jan.
And then I
Further
can
discussion? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Vern, I forgot the question. I was gonna say then I can go through the roll call since it's virtual.
Okay, we can. I was just asking if there were any further questions. I think there's been good discussion on all of it. Okay.
Vern McGinnis,
Yes.
Phyllis Versti,
Yes.
Mary Casely,
No?
Jan Hood.
Yes.
So we have the majority of the vote. So does that mean that it moves forward, Vern?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's have some discussion then about we were sent the template for the proposal and the process. Are there comments about that? This would be about the process of starting with April and other grants that we might have going out and find projects. And
Yeah, I have questions about I felt what this was mandatory forms that the agencies need to fill out. What are the mandatory forms? And are they necessary? Because that's what I was concerned about.
I mean, they have to fill out something to have documentation that they're putting in for a bid. So they can't just verbally say that they want to put in for a bid. So the application will not be as intense, won't have as many questions as it did for this calendar year. So the application won't have as many questions, but it will have questions that, especially if an agency is proposing a new program, you guys have an application to review to know what that program entails. So the mandatory forms will be, they'd have to do an application, they have to do a budget. And because of the bidding process, they have to put in, or there has to be a formal way of doing the bidding.
Our concern was our agencies shying away from the application process because of the mandatory forms? Do they have the staff that they need to fill these forms out? So that's what it was saying, because we're really concerned about the fewer number of agencies that are choosing not to apply.
Yeah, and so from what I've had with connections and stuff with the community and the different agencies, especially the ones that haven't applied, that maybe have applied in the past, it hasn't been connected to the application. However, per your guys' request, meeting the requirements, the application will be shortened, but yeah, there still has to be mandatory forms. And then the more, that they can put in the application to explain to you guys about the program, the eligibility requirements, the things you guys are looking for, then that gives you guys information that then, hopefully that will help you make a decision without them having to then, like, whether they explain it to you, whether they explain it to you during like a presentation or they put in an application, they're going to have to be able to communicate to you guys what the program proposal is.
I understand that perfectly. And looking just at the this application, that's probably fine, but in a broader sense, the process, and we spoke to it a little bit in the minutes of the last meeting, of talking about actually going out and looking for and talking with the agencies, whether it's LifeSil, going to one of my questions with Easter seals is what's holding up they're expanding it, and what if they got more money and be able to do more. Transition program of spending even more money on that, but even going to ones that aren't coming to us for money, alert them to the fact that we have some extra, not extra money, but we have some money that we're looking at setting aside for grants that would be one-time grants next year in April. And what are your issues? Is there something that we could really find and help you? So I don't know how big the list is that we go and talk to, but I mean, I think that's part of the process. Then that it falls into, once we get that and they're coming in and asking for it, it comes in and they have to do the paperwork on their request. So that's kind of where I am.
I don't know if we can verbally visit with them. If we don't see an application, can we go to them and say, why did you choose not to apply? Because I think we were made aware of one agency who the accountant put it to them that was costing them more to apply than they would get because of their staff to fill out the forms.
Yes. Yeah. So I think a little bit of personal contact so that they understand our process and think about that and how can we help you with it and what's your issues prior to really up front so that they can have some time to do that. So, yeah.
Right.
And I don't know how to build that into this document, so, yeah.
Yeah, so
Are you on your phone, Phyllis?
No, I'm trying to get back. I'm trying to get on the computer.
You're back.
You're back, but you had the noise that made it sound like you were on phone.
Phyllis, I think you have to log off of the first one that you're on. I think that's what that was. Okay, and so to clarify, so the RFP, so if the goal is for that to start, that funding, there's around like 60,000 as of now that was provided for funding for 21 that wasn't approved. So for that request for proposal that you received in your packet, for that to start April 1st, there's a lot of stuff that has to be done as far as it has to be publicized, that there's the request for proposal process starting, and then we have to give them time to do the application, have internal discussions on what they want to do. Then that would have to come to the board. The applications would have to be reviewed by the board. And then for my clarification, are you going to want a meeting to do presentations and then schedule another meeting to make decisions? because then there's a lot that has to be done for those contracts to be executed and ready to rock and roll on April 1st in these 3 short months. And then as far as like reaching out, we have a list of several IDDD agencies within McLean County. There's like 10 to 12. I don't know if it's inclusive because we may be missing one. So we will send out the RFP to them, and then we have to advertise it in the pantograph, and we'll advertise it through the pathogram. But we will send that out to these agencies and let them know that this is happening, that if there's certain programs that they need or certain funding that they're able to do that application. But then, okay, so I'll just stop there. So to reach out to these agencies, we have listed these 10 to 12 agencies, say, here's another request for proposal for April 1st through December 31st. They do the application, you guys review the application. Do you want one meeting? Do you want presentations, or do you not want presentations?
I don't think we need presentations.
I'm thinking that if we're reading these documents right and we think that it's something that fits into our authority and we like it, we could follow up and ask more questions, but I don't think we need to have the presentation.
Okay. So then
That's
we would
part of simplifying it.
Say again,
Right.
Phil.
That's
Yes.
part of making this simpler.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
If they fill out the application, we read through it and we think it's okay, we'll grant it. If we don't think it's okay, we won't. Or if we have other questions. So maybe we need one meeting, but no presentations, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so then I will make sure that there's time for you guys to have the applications, to review them, and then if you have questions from those applications, send those questions to me and I can distribute those back to that agency and then get you those answers prior to the one meeting, so we can meet in March, have the first meeting in March. And so then that way, the beginning of March, so that way like the contract, however many, can be ready to go on it, can be executed by April 1st. And that way they know if the program is going to start April 1st, because they have to put things in place if they get funding for a program that may not already be in place.
Is there any money left over from 2020 fiscal year?
We won't know that until January 31st because the year is not finished. And so the agencies complete monthly financial worksheets. And so they have until December 31st to utilize the money, and then they report on that January 31st. And so we won't know until January 31st if there's any money left from this calendar year.
Okay.
So it looks like there's probably going to maybe be some money left, but we have no clue how much. And plus, Mark first did reach out, and they're doing the renovations now, as Brian had stated. They're doing the renovations now for the computer lab and the sensory room, and they're also for the pediatric therapy. They're getting equipment, so they're probably going to spend a lot of money between November and December. So we won't have a definite number on how much is left from 2020, if there is any left, until January 31st. So that still gives you guys time if there is money left, and that can be used in funding allocation for that April 1st through December 31st. That does give you guys time to know the exact amount, if anything is left.
Okay.
There was at least 2 months, if not 3, where there was not a program at the Carl Workout Center.
Yep. And that's part of one of today's action items. You guys talked about last meeting, that you wanted to utilize those 2 months that wasn't paid to give to Easter Seals for doing the extra autism diagnostic clinics. So there is an item in today's agenda to approve the money that wasn't used in partnerships and health to be used to do a contract amendment for Easter Seals to utilize that money. And the amount of kids that they served that would be funded by the 377 would be 16 kids instead of 13.
Okay. Do we need to give any indication to agencies of how much money there is?
So what we can do in the RFP, the request for proposal, is kind of give a range.
Okay.
So at the minimum, there's 60,000, and then we won't. The RFP goes out in January. We won't have the full range, but we could say a minimum of 60,000 in the RFP. But knowing that we don't know if there's going to be more than that until the very beginning of February.
Is that a minimum or a maximum?
The 60,000 is the minimum available.
Okay. I guess I've been thinking all along that it probably wouldn't all go to one agency, that we wouldn't spend it all in one. But if somebody came up with a super program, yes, but there may be some seed money like we've done before. 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. But I guess we can figure that out if, depending upon what they come in with. So.
And I just want one more clarifying question as far as, like I said, we do have some agencies that we have a list of that we can initiate an email with them and state, here's the request for proposal, the 377 board, kind of do an introduction on, what you guys are looking for. We're not going to be able to build significant relationships with these agencies in that short amount of time. So just want to make sure that is sufficing your guys' needs as far as reaching out to them, but also being aware that, and plus it can become very inappropriate for us to try to build a relationship when the RFP out, because then versus when there's not an RFP out, because then it could be seen as not appropriate if we're talking to one agency or making initiation with one agency versus not all of the agencies, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
But we definitely are planning on in 2021, probably especially after this beginning of the year funding cycle, that we are going to build relationships. It's kind of hard during a pandemic to build relationships, but we are going to try to build more relationships with these agencies. And just as a side note, to add to all of the complexities, the health department, we are responsible to protect the vaccine clinics. And so everyone that works at the health department, including us, has to participate. And so that is going to also take up a significant amount of our time. There's 2 teams that will be rotating. So when there's a vaccine one day, if there's the clinic the next day, and we don't know how often they're going to be, but we have to commit to that to the point that if our turn up, we would have to cancel and reschedule a board meeting because the vaccine clinic would take priority.
Understand.
Yeah, I have to let the other boards know too, but I just wanted to have that transparency that we want behavioral health in 21. So.
And we know we're on a short timeline too, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving then to the items for action, approve the 377 board calendar year 2021 program funding allocation.
We did that with, that was just you guys did that with Mark first.
We just finished that up, that's right. And I guess we should actually approve the process that we talked about and the documentation of the new funding from April through December 31st. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Then Do we have to approve the contract with Easter Seals, or is that already taken care of?
So that is 2020's contract amendment. So
Okay.
that is not for the funding for 21. That is for this year, the contract to be amended for the funding to be increased from 13,972 to
So we didn't approve that, we just discussed it.
Yep.
Okay. Approval of the, what we just discussed for the calendar year 20 for Easter Seals.
I so move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
You're seconding. All right, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Okay, the motion is approved. Then we do have one set of minutes, which is from a meeting that we had in November of 19. And I think they were much easier to read this time. So my compliments on that. A motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move.
All right. And I should have asked, are there any corrections or additions? Hearing none, I've got a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you for the second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed. So the minutes are approved.
Big Vern, I
Yes.
do want to thank them for making the minutes shorter. It was a big help. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
I think it was a very nice, they
Thank
listened,
you,
and
Amy.
did a good job. So our
It
company,
wasn't
Yeah.
Amy. Yep, it wasn't Amy.
Jeff.
Jeff Paternoster, my office support specialist. And he actually he referred to Robert's Rules of Order and got some advisement from there on how to what to include, what not to include to shorten them. So that was all of Jeff. So kudos to Jeff.
We did a
Yeah.
good job. Thank you.
Well, and I think sometimes we forget, because we are a public body, he may have to include things that we don't think are necessary. So
I understand that too.
I appreciate him checking with Robert.
Right.
Yeah, I do
Great.
too.
Is there anything else to come before the board?
When is our next official meeting?
So I need to complete the 21 calendar for based off of like the cycle, the funding cycle, the election. I don't know if election was the correct word for that for the president and the secretary. So I'm hoping the beginning of January, I will be able to get you guys out a list to make sure it works for you guys. Hopefully the first meeting will be in March. Then I know we have to have one in July. So I will get those out to you after the first of the year.
Okay.
Are
And
we-
if you get applications for this grant, you'll just send those to us and we can,
Yeah, I think we can do what we did recently. We can send them to you via email. I'll have Jeff connect with you guys. See if you want them via email. I think some of you wanted them delivered, some of you picked them up. And so we'll work with you and see how you would like to receive those.
Email's fine for me. Yep.
Your
Me too.
plate is very full, but we have talked in previous years about board education and about what is out there and are we meeting the needs of the IDDD community? So I still would like to have maybe just one person who's well connected to the whole this community come in and talk to us.
Okay, we can look at making that a goal for
I think
2021.
that would be an excellent idea.
I agree.
Yeah. I want to thank my colleagues on the board. I think we've done the job the way we should. We've had a lot of challenges. It's been very difficult. And I think that you should be feeling very good about the fact that we handled this and we approved and we challenged and we moved on. And I'm looking forward to what might come in for our leftover money that we can help put some extra dollars into and maybe kick something out. So appreciate that. It's great to serve with you.
And
Thanks,
Amy,
Vern.
if you in contact with any of the family members from Ron Moorhead's family? Give
I
them
have
our good wishes.
Yes.
Are we able to send cards anywhere? Or?
I think if you wanted to send cards, they would go to Carl Broman.
I thought he was in the hospital in Decatur.
Oh, he left? I didn't realize that. He was, when I
What
talked
did
to
your
Bob,
email
he was
say,
in
Amy?
Broman then.
I'm sorry, what?
What did
When
your
I talked
email
about-
say? Where is Ron a member or a patient?
When I talked to Bob, he was in Broman.
Right, but Amy just sent out an email yesterday.
Okay, I didn't see that. Okay. Oh, well, no. I did see that, but I didn't realize that was the case.
That was the same one that I sent you, Vern.
Okay.
Yeah, we certainly want him to know we're thinking of him.
Yes.
They did not tell us where he is receiving care at.
Okay.
Thank you. We're all frozen on the screen. Are we going to be able to take ourselves off?
Mary's looking for that email.
Oh,
That's it. If I find it, I'll send it out if it's any
Okay.
different.
All right.
it was from Jeffrey.
If that's the case, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
I so
Thank you,
moved.
Phyllis. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for your time.
10
Right.
minutes